Hey Sarah, okay, so here is your past life spread. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at where you are, what you did with the majority of your time, an important day with the relationship and feelings involved, another important day, the death and lesson learned. And we will get hints of time usually throughout the reading, but in this case, we're going far back. And so what I'm going to do is relay to you the impressions that I'm getting, the images that are coming through. And your job is going to be to try to make connections where you can, based on what comes through here in your current life. And I'll try to help however I can. So let's start and see what comes through here. So this card, where we are, this is the Atlantis and Lemuria card. And a lot of times it very much would feel like Atlantis or Lemuria or another maybe civilization happening around this time period, and it basically can indicate as well other ancient civilizations. And I feel like that's what we're going for right now. And there's this thing about Atlantis and Lemuria that they actually went through various phases, through various like time periods and phases themselves. So what it feels like is, it feels like it feels like very like an ancient time or another civilization, but not necessarily particularly Atlantis or Lemuria, but it feels a little different, which is interesting because I had a recent reading where that came through, which was kind of cool. So I'm wondering why these are coming through. But we are going back to ancient times. However, the place we're looking at comes through as a very sophisticated place, like technologically speaking, and like mannerism speaking. Like we're not looking at like ape, cavemen-ish type of thing. It doesn't feel like it's part of our timeline even, but like it's like another, again, it feels like a different place. And the imagery coming through is the place is there's a lot of white. There's a lot of like very clean white. Kind of how it's built, it feels like there's a lot of outdoor access as far as structure, architecture. Kind of like maybe what you would see if you were to look up Greece. Like when you think of like a Greek place, how it's usually like really like white and then blue or whatever, but this is just, there's a lot of white. Or it's almost like, what's it? Like I can't even remember the reference, but it's like it looks very like clean and almost like polished or posh or whatever it is, but it's also very beautiful, and it's a place that's constructed based on the like views and land as well. So it's almost like what you would call like very strategic, thought out engineering and architecture and design, if that makes sense. These past lives too, sometimes, because it's really about, where you are with your belief system and such, and what you've heard or researched or whatever, but what it comes down to is time and how we humans see time as linear, but sometimes we get lives that come through that are actually from future or parallel. It's just very interesting, and more of those lives have been coming through. So it's just the kind of thing where I feel like I can't pinpoint, because it feels like, at one point I'm saying ancient, but at the other point it's like a completely different civilization, it feels like, where it might even feel futuristic just based on like the architecture and design and layout and things like that. So just be open to what this means to you, because we also can see a lot of other aspects of our soul living in different parallel lives or future or past when we dream. So if you find that you're a dreamscaper, you're someone that remembers your dreams, and you find that you're in different places in your dreams often, that feels like a whole complete place or world while you're dreaming, and you're there doing a mission or whatever it is, you're there doing whatever task you're doing, just keep in mind that you could be visiting that, and this could be coming up because it's kind of like a message for you to also kind of, if you aren't already, to open your mind to the possibilities that you are an interdimensional soul and quite capable of, capable of like tapping into resources and energy points and timelines and whatever it is. You're quite capable of that, but you might not be aware of it, or you might brush it off as like, oh, it's just a dream. On the other hand, you might be very aware of what's happening to you, you know, but just keep that in mind, that concept, because that's what's coming through. Also, why they're so vividly showing me the like design and architecture, it could be because that's something that you actually find that pulls at your attention when you visit a place or when you go to a new like friend's house or whatever it is. You might be someone that really takes in the architecture or the building concept, or even just when you're out and about, it might be like second nature, but you might be someone that highly admires architecture and design. And if that's the case, and that can translate into other kind of design as well, but if that's the case, that could stem from here, because they're showing me it's very vivid. It's almost like a part, why it's so vivid is usually when they show me vivid things, it's usually because it's part of what you enjoyed in this life, like part of what you took attention to, what you paid attention to, if that makes sense. Almost like flashes of your memory from this time. That's what it's kind of like. So there's even, it's very particular too. It's even like on a balcony overlooking like water and a beautiful city. It's a very beautiful, very clean place. And that in itself, you might be someone where this might sound so random, but that could explain if you're someone that actually likes to be on balconies looking at views like that. I know that sounds kind of random, and maybe you think, oh, lots of people like that, or, you know, whatever it is, but that could be a particular thing. So keep that in mind. And then there's one more thing about this place. What was it? It was about the city itself and about it being very clean, and things are very organized and ideal. It's kind of idyllic. So you might be someone that is highly sensitive or aware to the environment in this life because of how polluted things are getting or have been or whatever it is. If you find that you are triggered by reading or hearing or learning about all the pollution or anti-environmental policies, whatever it is, those kinds of things, if they trigger you, that could make sense as well to stem from here, because we're looking at a place where it's almost pristine. So keep that in mind. Now let's go to what you did with the majority of your time. This card is the food card in general, but it can mean a lot of things. So it's meant so many things, from a homemaker, like a mother who just cooks a lot, to a chef, or to we've even had someone who used to taste the food to make sure it's not poison for royalty kind of thing. So a lot of things can come through when it comes to the food thing. But what it feels like here is it feels like a progression is occurring with your skills when it comes to putting things together. And it feels like there's something very innovative about the way that you approach this subject matter. And it does feel like we're looking at someone who is, it's like, there's something about it where I want to say like, oh, you're a chef, you're a cook, you're a baker. There's something about you working with food, but it also goes beyond just a typical chef in a food place. You know what I mean? Like, so it feels like there's something very special and unique about this. Almost like, again, the innovation comes through really strongly. So how you can be connecting to this in some way. By the way, this life is a male life. It feels very masculine. Or it feels like we're looking at a male, not necessarily super masculine, but a male. And how you can be connecting is, one, direct connections or opposite connections in this way. So direct connections could be something like, are you someone that easily finds your way around a kitchen, around food, likes to mix and match, doesn't necessarily need to measure things out, confident, you know, or maybe you even like just simply baking or cooking particular things. That would make sense too if you like particular pieces of cooking or baking, like a niche of some kind, because I feel like this person eventually begins to go from generalization to specificity when it comes to what they're like honing in on in the craft of what they do. So there's also something was coming through what they do work with. It's something that's like shiny, and it feels like, and this might not be it, but it looks and feels like when you see like a heavily decorated caramel apple or if you see like a caramel apple with intriguing design or decoration or mixtures on it that you are like, you might have like noticed, oh, that's really interesting and neat. I never thought to put a marshmallow on the outside of a caramel apple, you know, like things like that. That's what it looks like, the caramel part where it glazes over and it becomes cracked and shiny. That's what it feels like in particular. So I'm just letting you know what images are coming through. And I just tell you everything I see because I don't know if you could make connections to random things like liking sugar. Like, are you a sugar person? You know, that I know that sounds really weird because tons of people love sugar, but me particular, I don't. I'm a salt person, you know. So if you find that you are drawn to sugar in general or design, where you might watch those cake baking shows, if those intrigue you, where people are putting together these amazing pastries or amazing desserts or whatever it is, if you watch those shows or if you look at pictures or just seeing a picture makes you just like drop your jaw, like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You know, if you're triggered in any way like that, it would stem from here. But we are looking at someone who is, again, growing with the craft and becoming very specified. So this could also be speaking to you at this time. If you're looking for something to do, you might find that you might want to look in areas, and this could be for a hobby or a job or whatever it is. If you're trying to figure out where to go, you might find that you like going towards or in a path where you know eventually it will become very narrow, very specified, and you could become a top person or master in that field in a very specific way. So that also, the innovation comes through because it's very artistic in a way where it's like you're using your creativity to utilize the tools that are out there, the general tools that everyone can get a hold of, yet you're using your creativity and innovation to use them in a way that hasn't been used before in order to create something completely brand new. So you might be someone that really likes the idea of creating new things or bringing innovation into the world in some way, and it might seem small to you, like it might be something you don't even think about as innovative or creative, but try to make connections where you can with that, because that's what I feel like is coming through a lot. And again, if you are feeling like I don't know what to do with my life right now, or I want to do something new, or I want to try a new hobby, or I want to do this or that, or see what comes across your radar, and whatever excites you the most, go into. And when you go down that path, again, look to see how you can kind of use the experience to culminate into something very, very like a niche, something unique, innovative, creative, because you have all of the creativity and innovation in you. So again, and that, you know, it doesn't have to do with food. It could be with anything. So if you're a designer, if you're an artist, if you're even an analyst, like whatever you're doing, you can always find a new innovative way to do that. You're really quite capable of that. So keep that in mind. Keep making connections when it comes to this kind of thing. And we're going to move on. But first I want to mention, looking at a male life here, that can indicate a couple of things too. So it can indicate, one, that you have like what you would consider masculine energy. Maybe you were a tomboy at one time or still are. Maybe you are just more in touch or comfortable with like masculine energy in the way of like just your personality or your reaction or your behavior, whatever it is. You might be really comfortable with that. On the other hand, you could be someone who is very balanced with both feminine and masculine energy, or because we're looking at a masculine energy here, you could have chosen to incarnate into this life as someone to experience a feminine energy mostly, just to get the experience, because here we're looking at the masculine energy. So try to connect in whatever way you can. And there was one more thing. Oh, okay, so there was the direct connection. There was the direct connection we made here where we're talking, everything I was talking about before is if you were to make a connection based off what we were talking about, but then there's this other thing we do where we can make opposite connections. Just like we talked about here with the female energy kind of thing. Once the soul experienced something, we like to incarnate into a life to experience sometimes the opposite. So everything I said here, it could be that you came back into this life to be opposite, in the sense of Maybe you are not interested in carving out a niche for yourself. What you might be what people call would like naturally like term lazy, even though I don't like that word because, you know, it's like a negative connotation, but it doesn't have to be negative. Well, all it means is like where you're happy with the, you know, bare minimum, low standard kind of thing, but you're happy. And that's all that really matters, is you're happy. So you see, so you can, again, directly make connections where you've come back into this life and you're bringing this with you, this kind of like achievement-oriented, goal-oriented, innovative, creative kind of lots of, it's almost like a workaholic feel to it to achieve. So that would be a direct connection. Or again, the opposite, where you've come back to kind of chill out, because we see a lot of people who do incarnate to just like take a breather. So to keep that in mind, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people, they go around and like, if they are like what society calls lazy or whatever, a lot of people tend to feel bad about it. Like they feel guilty or they feel bad and they get berated for it, and they don't even realize that they're that way because in their last life they just worked their butts off. So they've kind of earned chill and relaxed kind of lifestyle. So I'm saying that because if that is you, it's to tell you not to feel guilty or not to feel bad or to ignore people and not pay attention to people if they do, tell you that or berate you, whatever it is. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be feeling bad, whatever your lifestyle really is, because it's that way for a reason. A lot of times it has to do with this kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. Keep making connections. And we're going to go to the first important day here. Now, this day is there's a natural disaster. This is the Mother Nature natural disaster card. So I'm seeing what comes through, and when I put that down, it didn't seem like a huge natural disaster. It seemed like it was something that was a little, just like something that rocked. It just like rocked you guys for like a short time. And here we have the soulmate card. Excuse me. And so that's the soulmate card, and then the feeling is content. So actually it's kind of interesting because usually with the natural disaster card, we get days of like grief and trauma and a lot of loss. And it's really unique here because on this day, it feels like due to whatever occurred, it brought you together with someone, is what it feels like. It feels like you found your partner because it brought you together based on this happening. And it brought a lot of peace into your life. So what I feel like is happening here is there was something that occurred outside, like almost like what we would call an earthquake, because I don't know what they had back then, but I would say it's something like an earthquake, right? So there's a rumbling, there's an earthquake, and it feels like because of that, what they're showing me is like a woman coming indoors, basically. It feels like she's like rushing indoors because of this like weird rumbling thing going on with the earth. Feels like an earthquake, and it feels like you're there, and so it feels like a what they call in the movies a meet cute, where like the two lead roles, or the romantic roles or whatever, find each other in a kind of like interesting situation, and how they meet. And that's what I feel like we have here. It's kind of like in a way, I guess you'd call it romantic. So in this life, you could be coming back as someone who is romantic. It can mean a few things. It can mean, one, if you find that you are a romantic, what's it called? If you're, you have romantic ideals, keep in mind you don't want to limit yourself in any way as far as the right partner. Let's say you haven't found the right partner yet, or it's just starting up, or whatever it is. Don't over idolize. More like it's like things that you've been brought up with, or that we as women have been brought up with, that is romantic, like what we are supposed to consider romantic. Make sure that you are being very open with what you consider to be romantic, and that you can define romance for yourself. So in that way, it's almost like a message of kind of like manifesting and creating your own romantic narrative, but it's in a way that makes it so you don't get hurt. you know, like make sure that you are also realistic. So there's this feeling of making sure there is romance, but realism in the romance. And if you are in a partnership, and let's just say the partnership, there are certain things that bother you about it, make sure that, you know, usually it's very easy to blame our partner for not stepping up or not being exactly who we want them to be or do or whatever it is. Make sure that you're self-assessing yourself, and that the things that you want out of a partnership are realistic, and that the partner that you're with, they're aware of your demands or your expectations. So just make sure that you're expressing your expectations to someone, and not just letting them like kind of read your mind, like you expect them to do something without voicing that that's what you want them to do, if that makes sense. So keep that in mind. This can also be, let's see, I feel like there's something else to this, and it's just like sometimes it's hard to articulate the message coming through, because it does have to do with finding peace in a relationship. So if you're not in a relationship, the relationship you're looking for, when you find it, it will bring you a lot of peace, the feelings of peace, not the kind of feelings that you, like a lot of people, of course there's going to be passion. When you're in love, there's passion, but don't get lost in expecting constant like passion or lust. Don't get lost in the lust. That's what I feel like is coming through more than anything, is don't get lost in lust in a way where it's like, make sure that again you are realistic. And when you're realistic and you find a partner as a very grounded, level-headed person who's open to a relationship, then that's where it's like that's the key, that's the ticket. And the feeling for the right person, the right relationship will make you feel at peace, will make you feel grounded. It's almost like the groundedness and the peace within the relationship is romantic, if that makes sense. So keep that in mind, okay? And keep making connections wherever you can. So let's move to the next important day here. Here we have the graduation card, and I feel very much when I put this down, it had to do with your career in a sense where we're looking back here. That's what I feel. I feel like it was like you're working, achieving, working towards this thing, and I feel like the graduation is not like a school graduation, but it's like a graduation of your achievements, your reputation, who you are in the community, what you bring to the community. Basically, it's almost like what it feels like is you become a household name in this place that you live for the thing that you do. So it's not like you're like a celebrity and everybody knows your name, but everyone who wants to partake in your expertise, and let's just pretend it's something like, let's say you design wedding cakes. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing where everyone in the city would know to go to you for their wedding, if they had weddings back then. You know what I mean? So that's what I feel like eventually happens, is this day comes when you realize, I made it. Like this is like, you have an aha moment. It's also this feeling of understanding who you are, accepting who you are, which is easier these days for men, I feel like, than women. So I feel like it's interesting this is coming up, because I feel like this is a big message for you to acknowledge your achievements. And that doesn't mean academic. It doesn't mean necessarily like how much money you make or, you know, what you own, the car. Acknowledge your achievements in your soul, in your heart, how much you've grown. Start to look back and see where you've come, like how far you've come to where you are today. And yeah, there's always more movement forward. There's always places to go, but it's important that you assess yourself and give yourself proper recognition and congratulations and credit, and pat yourself on the back. Like, make sure you are giving yourself self-love, because even if you have a partner that does it, or your mom is really, you know, lovey and happy for you, you yourself really need to make sure that you build a lovely foundation of self-love for yourself that you can always fall back on in those little cases when you feel like you know, we all feel, sometimes we feel like we're failing at something, you know, we're having a bad day, you're just feeling down. Make sure you have that lovely, steady foundation for yourself, for self-love, that you can tap into when you are feeling bad, just so to remember again how much you've done, how, you know, like we're talking about relationships, friendships, what you've done to help people, kind words you say to people, like, you know what I mean? Those things count. So just make sure that you know that you do matter and you do count. Also, there is this feeling of, well, actually, I didn't say the relationship here is the soul group. So we're also looking at your soul group, and we are looking at this feeling right here, which is kind of isolation a bit. And so there's that. And then, so with this coming up now, which is nice, because once I start talking about these cards, the more images come in. I'm glad I mentioned these. So we're looking at this graduation, we're looking at everything I was just saying there. And then we want to come in with this. And what this does, the soul group is the place you live in, the region, the people that you are working with, and it's your town, it's your hometown, your home place. That's your soul group, is what it feels like. It's not everybody there, but it's like, this is where you're meant to be. These are the people you're meant to be with, to learn lessons from, and to teach lessons too. Now, the isolation card is really interesting. It's kind of like a lonely isolation card, but that does not mean bad. So you might, in your current life, experience bouts where you feel isolated or alone from the rest of society, where it's the kind of thing, if you've ever felt like alone in a crowded room kind of thing, or if you're walking down the street and you feel like you're in your own little bubble and you're kind of the observer. So if you find that you are the observer, or you might take yourself a step away from a crowd of people or a group of people to get a breather or whatever that is, that would stem from here as well. And there's really nothing to think of that except to know that it does come from here, because it almost feels like the separation aspect and the almost isolated or lonely aspect actually, what it feels like, played a role in an artistic way in your craft. So it's almost like this person was a professional and expert at utilizing their emotional state, and not just that, but it's their emotional state, but also their psyche, like understanding the human psyche and the emotional state in order to create what he creates, but also to inspire him and motivate him to create what he creates. So we're looking at someone who is an expert at utilizing all the various parts of himself in order to create. So that in itself is a really great, awesome, big message too, which is to recognize that you have everything you need inside yourself to create the life you want. And that can mean whatever it does mean to you, whatever life it is that you're looking for, but it can also mean certain parts of your life too, just like it pertains to his craft. But essentially the big message is to start tuning into yourself, and this means understanding all the layers to you, which also means learning how to deal with even the icky parts that you find within yourself, because we all have icky parts, but it's learning how to love the icky parts and how to utilize the icky parts to our advantage in the way that this guy does here. Because again, like isolation, loneliness, depression, those kinds of things, they're so easily thought to be not helpful in life, but there's a way to use them. And I feel like we're looking at this coming through to show you how this aspect of your soul was quite capable, not only of using those darker parts, those icky, darker parts perhaps, of him to create beautiful things and to create this amazing reputation for himself. But it's coming through as a message too, that for you to understand that if he can do it, you can do it, and for you to try to do that yourself. If you ever get caught up in something, it's almost like a feeling of like getting stuck somewhere, or certain parts of yourself you're not digging too much, you're not really into, like, you know, we know ourselves, and there are certain parts we just kind of push away, we don't want to deal with or whatever. But it's like if you see them not as the enemy anymore and you see them more as a tool, start seeing all the parts of yourself as tools. And when you do that, then you're going to be able to create amazing things and it's like that's where all that innovation and creativity come through. So keep that in mind, that all the parts of you are valuable. And I feel like that's the best way to wrap up this right here, is every part of you is valuable. You just have to find that value or assign the value to it, and then it becomes a tool. So everything is a tool. So use that to your advantage in whatever way that comes to mind for you when you hear that, okay? So here we're going to go to the death card. It's the burn card. And it's interesting, like, you're not burning in a house, you're not burning at the stake here. What it feels like is a different kind of burn. And there are different kinds, like a fever. There's also like, we've even gotten a sunburn before. And I feel like what we're looking at here is more of like an internal thing. It feels like it was external that became internal. So for example, it's the feeling of when you go out and it's cold outside, you don't wear socks and you get wet and cold or whatever, and then you go back inside, and because of what's happened outside like on your body, you know, the cold or whatever, then you develop a fever or pneumonia or a cold, you know what I mean? So the outside goes inside and kind of makes a mess. I feel like that's what we're looking at here, is something on the outside goes to the inside and it's making a mess. And what comes through, quite frankly, is stress and overworking and not getting enough sleep. So it's like so much time and effort is going into your work and you're not giving yourself enough rest. And I feel like that eventually takes over, and I feel like that's what we're looking at here. So I don't know if it's, you know, technically like what you call a heart attack or a stroke or whatever it is, but the life here ends earlier than it could have or should have if you were to rest more, take more care of yourself, focus on things that wasn't so achievement or goal oriented, more on your family, because I feel like there is a family, but they play second fiddle to your career. So that could also be a message coming through to make sure that you know what is most important to you. And that's, you know, if it is achievement, career, whatever, that's okay. Just make sure you know what's important. Like the kind of thing where you don't want to look back and wish you spent more time with people or relationship, whatever, over your work, or vice versa. You wish you spent more time on your craft or your work or your job rather than, you know, hang out with people. You know what I mean? So it's really, obviously it's a case by case basis here. That's why I'm saying it in that way. So make sure you know that basically make sure you prioritize what is correct for you and what you will not regret later on. Kind of like a hindsight thing. Like make sure that when you look back in a few years that you know what I mean? Like it's just to help with your decision making. So make sure that you are paying attention to your decision making as far as what you're prioritizing in your life. This can also speak to if you are someone that does get like pneumonia, bronchitis, or a flu or cold in the wintertime when it's cold out, or if you have breathing problems like asthma, something like that, because I feel like there is like a congestion going on, like a sickness inside the chest area. But also it could be where you get affected physically when you're stressed out. So if that's the case and you do get affected when you get stressed out physically, pay attention to that and make sure you get enough rest and that you're not stressing yourself out, because stress does shorten your life. So make sure you are not overworking yourself or overdoing it. It's important, okay? Because if you get rest and you stay away from stress or whatever it is, you'll get so much more done, and you'll get it feels like you get less done if you're not working all the time, kind of thing. But just that's not the case. Like you'll have better work, more quality work done as long as you do rest up, not just your body but your mind. Okay, so keep that in mind, please. Now this card kind of just speaks to what we're talking about. It's the lesson card, and this is the work all day card, which is the overworked card, like you're overworked. So in this life, we're looking at someone again who focused so much on his career and his work, and focused on the things that really just like took a lot out of him, used up so much energy. He loved it. It's great. It feels like he didn't regret it, honestly. But the lesson was for him to learn to balance more, and he didn't quite learn that lesson fully because he allowed himself to get so caught up in things that were driving his mind and body past where they should have been, into sickness. So this is a card that overall is coming through as a lesson to make sure you are balancing everything out. Do a self-assessment. Make sure you're not overworking your mind, your heart, your soul, your body. Make sure you are moderating yourself is what comes through. What's coming through is the word moderation and balance, whatever that might be. So if you're able to, in whatever way, to balance your life out more, to give yourself more balance, in whatever, it could be relationships, job, if you're learning anything, school, fun, having fun, learning a new hobby. There's so many things, but basically make sure you are balancing all these things out, and again making sure that you are focusing and giving your time and energy to the things that matter most to you. So there's prioritizing and balance, and that's really how I'm going to wrap this up, is prioritizing and balance, okay? And keep making connections however you can on your end, all right? So there's your past life. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for letting me read you.